Hello, everyone, and welcome to Powerhouse Working Moms Mindset Summit. We are in our third week, so we're almost more than halfway through. Today, we are so lucky to be blessed with Lindsay Pollock. She is joining us today. Let me give you a little bit of background because she's got a really interesting background I think you guys would be interested in. She is a New York Times bestselling author. She's a keynote speaker and one of the world's leading experts on career and workplace success. So I hope you brought your questions today. She was recently named to the 2020 Thinkers 50 Radar list, which honors 30 global management thinkers whose work is shaping the future of how organizations are managed and led. And her latest book is The Remix, and this is how to lead and succeed in a multi-generational workplace. She also it was named a Book of the Month for both the Wall Street Journal and Financial Times. And she's also the author of 2 previous career books for young professionals. Lindsay has spoken for more than 250 corporations, law firms, conferences, and universities, and her advice and opinions have appeared in such media outlets as the Today Show, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, and NPR. So we are so lucky to have her. And interviewing her today, we have Carrie Barrett. She is also my co-host in this summit, and she is the founder of Carrie Barrett Consulting, which is a full-service public speaking and media presentation and strategy firm. So if you are trying to figure out how to get the best video, the best lighting, she is the girl to go to. She is an award-winning breaking news anchor with over 20 years of broadcasting, reporting, and producing experience. So we are really lucky today to have both of these fantastic women and to bring their wisdom to all of you. I will pass it over. Enjoy this talk and the rest of the summit.
Very good, Nicole. And we are lucky to have you with us for this as well. So thank you for creating this summit, not only for all of our panelists, but more importantly, even for all of our attendees who I know are getting a lot out of it. So thank you as well. A quick reminder to people who are watching that this is a fireside chat. So you have an opportunity to ask Lindsay questions directly. I would ask you to put them either in the chat or in the Q&A. And as we go through this conversation for the next 25 minutes or so, I will read your questions to her and she will answer them. So Lindsay is here to talk to us about navigating our career through COVID, which is, I feel like pivot, Lindsay, is the word of 2020. And if I hear it one more time, I'm going to wring its neck. But that's where we all are. How are you holding up? How are things going for you?
Oh, thank you for asking. I'm having a little deja vu. I was actually thinking back. I started my business in 2002. And the reason was that I had launched my career in 1999. Worked through 2000 and was laid off from my .com job right before 9/11 in 2001. And although the times are very different, it was a really time of high unemployment and sensitivity for job hunting and thinking about career success. And while I was job hunting, I started to launch a freelance writing and speaking business. And lo and behold, almost 20 years later, here we are. So I think that sometimes those pivots can have really positive outcomes, but at the time they can be really frightening.
Yeah, they are. They're terrifying. And people fall, I'm painting with a bit of a broad brush, but there are some people who are like, I'm just going to hunker down and hole up until whatever happens, happens. And then you see a different, mindset, which is I'm going to, go all out, and I don't know where it's going necessarily, but I'm going to go there full tilt. I mean, is there a right way or a wrong way to navigate this process? Are there mistakes that you see people making on the regular that you can say, don't do this?
I feel like because health is such a component of this moment now, I don't want to be too judgmental of anyone's choices, but I can tell you that back in 2001, I was in the hunker down and do nothing camp. And I think it was a big mistake. I say that I was launching my business, but I was really frightened to apply for jobs because I thought I wouldn't get them or there weren't jobs. I was very hesitant to launch my business because the times were very sensitive. And that I think set me back, maybe 6 to 9 months. So while the times are super challenging, I would really encourage people to take action in some way or direction. If your health is good and your family is safe and you feel ready for it, I think that waiting it out is not a smart strategy if you want to keep moving your career forward.
Well, that makes sense. And so you mentioned when, you were talking about launching your own business back around 2001, 2002. What about now? Is now a good time to launch a business?
I think any time is a great time and a terrible time. Like, I think if you're waiting for the moment where the situation and the climate is perfect, you'll probably wait forever. But what I did and what I usually recommend to people, because I get this question a lot, should I start a business now? My answer is that you don't have to make one single choice, right? It shouldn't be this black or white decision. Should I job hunt or start a business? Should I stay in my job or start a business? I think that you can really do both, or at least take some steps towards starting a business, even if you're pursuing other opportunities. So I think kind of diversifying your options and trying a lot of stuff is probably a really smart strategy right now.
Is the process of starting a business, or the questions, I guess, maybe that you would need to ask yourself, are they different right now than they would be, outside of a pandemic? And I mean, I get it. You're absolutely right. It's like the similar question that my husband and I used to ask ourselves before we had kids: is now the right time to have a baby? Well, if you wait for the perfect time, it's never going to happen. There's always going to be something. But are the questions of the process, is that different in the confines of where we're operating right now?
I think given that this is a powerful mom summit, that's a perfect analogy, right? It's always a good time and always a bad time to have a child, right? And you never know exactly how it's going to turn out, as we all know. So no, I don't think the questions are different, but I think maybe we have to be a little bit more gentle with ourselves on answering them. So a really important question is there a need in the market for what I want to sell? And I think looking at the market as it is today is the same in any situation, right? Are there people who would want to buy what it is, the service or the product that I'm selling? Do I have the team in place or the skill sets that I need to move forward? I think that positioning yourself to start now isn't that much different, but I will say again that bootstrapping it and sort of, doing it on a shoestring is kind of the approach that I took. This probably is not a great time to get venture capital investment and shop out, a huge proposal or business plan. But I think most businesses don't really start that way. I think when we think of entrepreneurship, we think of Silicon Valley a lot, and there's so many other ways to start a business than by shopping around for venture capital.
Well, that makes sense. So let me ask you then this: if people are, let's say maybe you're job hunting, maybe you're considering starting a business. I have had this question on a number of different webinars that I've been on, and is now a good time to go back to school if you're not exactly sure where it is that you want to go or what you should be doing, or is now the time that really we need to get our feet under us when it comes to like career or jobs? Or can you do it? Can you do all of that?
I think you can do all of it if you have the bandwidth. And one of the things I mean by doing all of it is start the process of doing all of it and see what's starting to stick, right? And see where your energy is. So if you start to fill out applications to grad school and you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, I can't stand it, I don't want to do it, you're learning about yourself that it's not the right time, right? If you start a business and you don't really like it, at least you've gotten that far. I think what I'm recommending is get out of your head. And once you take the first step and the second and the third step, you're going to have a lot more information. And on the education question, I don't think now is a good time to consider more education if you've never thought about it before, right? I think if it's been in the back of your mind, well, maybe I'd like to apply to grad school, I've always thought about getting another degree, then yeah, this is a great time to do it. But I will say that you have to weigh that with the outrageous cost of a lot of education. And now is probably not the best time to take on debt if you don't have a plan for paying it off. So again, it's always about weighing the pros and cons.
That makes sense. I mean, if it's something that you've been considering, then maybe, and there's other things are not panning out, or they're not panning out in the fullest, in their fullest capacity. Well, you can fill your time with that, and you can obviously make some good use of your time. But if it's something that's presented itself because there's no other options, then maybe that's not the best choice.
Yeah, and I think people make the decision based on, well, I've heard it's a good idea to go to business school during a recession. Well, did you want to go to business school anyway? What's your plan after? I think it has to be part of a larger strategy.
Right. And what are you going to do with that $300,000 in debt? That's
a big part of it, for sure. Why not take like one online webinar and see how that goes, and then think about the bigger picture?
That's a good idea. So speaking of money, what about raises? Is now a good time to ask for a raise? Because You know, there is, right, businesses are struggling, large and small, but there's also that sense that people are working from home and they're foregoing. Real estate is not necessarily being used to house employees. And I know that companies are, shuffling off some of that capital that they used to spend on those kinds of things, structures, brick and mortar, et cetera, et cetera. So what's the standard operating procedure as far as asking for a raise in something like this?
So this is a super popular question right now and always. Can I get a raise or a promotion? And I don't think my answer is that different. First, you have to think about the broader environment, not in the economy globally, but in your company and industry. So there are plenty of companies and industries right now that are thriving, right?
Yeah.
So if you're working twice as hard, if you are selling, let's say, backyard pools or trampolines or, one of the fields that's really expanding, and you are making a huge difference to the business, then maybe it is a good time to ask for a raise. If you are in hospitality and your restaurant is closed and you're trying to make do, not a good time. The issue I would say is you have to think about it in terms of your employer. So if you think you're working hard and you want a raise and you want more money, okay, but you have to think about it from their side. Are you offering more value that should be compensated by them? So put your argument or make your decision based on the value you're providing to your employer, not the amount of effort you feel that you're putting in that might be more than before. If you're going to ask for a raise, that's how you have to approach it.
Okay, so and this may tie into what you just said. We have a question up in the chat window right now, and she says, I've been doing the job of 3 people over the past 6 months. However, I'm still not getting paid equal to my peers. So does that influence whether she asks for a raise, or should she just be happy to have a job during the pandemic? And then there's a follow-up question to that, but I'll let you ask or answer that first.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I'm hearing this a lot. Again, I would say, do you think the money is there? Because if it's not there, you can't get water from a stone, right? So is the money there? Do you know that money is coming in? You might not know the answer, but if you do. The second thing is, remember that it's called a salary negotiation for a reason. So if they say no to more money, would you want more time off? Would you want a higher title? Would you want a different kind of schedule? I think go in knowing what else you are willing to negotiate for if the money isn't there. And I would also take into account your relationship with the person that you're going to be negotiating with, right? Do they know how much work you've been doing? Have you been documenting that you've been doing the work of 3 people? When I ask that question, people say, well, they should know. And the answer is sometimes they don't, or they're not paying attention. So I would start the process of documenting that before you have the conversation. But I don't see any reason why not to ask if you have a good argument and you have a backup plan for what else would be valuable to you.
Got it. When the follow-up question to that is also curious what your thoughts are on effective networking in today's current situation.
So I actually posed that same question when Lisa Brill was on this summit in the law firm industry. I think it goes back to the basics of networking, which is real, genuine human connection. I think that is absolutely possible to have over a Zoom like we're doing now, or on the phone, or over email, or through a LinkedIn message, as long as it's genuine. So I think it's never a good time to reach out to lots of strangers and say, hey, I'm selling my product, or I'm starting a business. What do you think? I think you have to start from, I really want to be mutually beneficial in my relationship. So one of the things that I love, I was a spokesperson for LinkedIn for 6 years, and I taught LinkedIn. And Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, always said that he thought it was a mistake for people to go to LinkedIn, and I would sort of expand this to any networking. He said it's a mistake to go to LinkedIn and log in and say, what am I going to get from LinkedIn today?
Yeah.
He said he recommends going and saying, what can I give? And I think that's how I would approach networking right now. When I look at my LinkedIn feed, I think, whose post can I like? Whose question can I answer? Where do I see a job that I could show somebody else? Where do I read an article that I could forward to a friend? And then it starts to come back to you. So I think if you approach it with the giving mentality first, I think a lot of it will come back to you, and I think feel a little bit better right now as well.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because how many times have we gotten messages in our inbox from someone we don't know, and they don't even take a paragraph to warm you up, you know, like, take me to dinner first before you try and sell me on your product or whatever it is. It really is about trying to create those connections, and you have to be perhaps a little bit more strategic now about it than you had to in the past, because you can't meet anybody in person. But you make a very good point.
Yeah, I would say though that this is a great time to reach out. A question I get a lot is, you know, I've lost touch with somebody. Is it okay to reconnect? I think now is actually a brilliant time to reconnect. If you genuinely are thinking about somebody, you know, I think it's really honest to say, you know, Carrie, we lost touch. You know, we used to work together. I've been thinking about you in this, you know, really difficult time. I hope you're doing well. I think that if there are people you want to reconnect with, this is actually a real opportunity to do that.
I also have heard that it's a good time to reach up, that people who perhaps were not available prior are now. Is there truth to that?
There is. I remember in the very, very, very early days of email in the 90s, it was really novel that people had email. So you could almost get in touch with anyone because they were like, oh, I got an email, you know, and the CEO would write back to you. And I'm kind of remembering that now, that it's like, oh, I have a little bit more time. I think that's faded over the past couple of months of people have navigated the social distancing. But I do think it's okay. And frankly, I think a lot of more junior people think that senior people get approached a lot more than they do. Most senior people tell me, I'm delighted if a younger person reaches out, if they're genuine and if they have a real connection to me. So I agree with you, like a cold email is really hard. But if you went to my university, if you were an intern at my company, if you're the child of a friend of mine, if you have been helped by a scholarship that my company supports, absolutely reach out. I would say though that a mistake people make is they just say, hi, Carrie, I really admire you. You know, would you be in touch? And it sort of doesn't give you anything to respond to. I would try to ask a question or say, I'm facing this dilemma. Do you have any advice? I would give the person something to respond to, because otherwise you're just kind of knocking on their door and have nothing to actually, nothing of substance to talk about.
Right. It's like a little game of chicken. You knock and then run away.
Yeah, pretty much.
We have played that when we were kids, right? Or maybe
totally.
So we have a couple of questions in the Q&A that I want to get to. Mustafa says, thank you for sharing such insights and life experience. If you were to start a consultancy during these hard times, what would you do differently, or what would you focus on the most?
So I think thank you for the question. It's a great one. I think I have spent way too much time, and anyone watching who knows me will absolutely nod in agreement, and so many of us are very type A. I spent too much time in my head wondering, what should I consult on? What should I offer people? What should I do? And I should have spent a whole lot more time asking other people, what help do you need? And so I think the first thing I would do is not try to formulate your perfect sales page or offering until you have surveyed, and just asking questions. I'm not talking about anything fancy. Hey, what do you guys need? What's on your mind? Where can I help? What do you need help with? That is where I would have started a lot sooner, because every time I actually go and ask people, I learn so much more than I ever could have thought of myself.
That's a great answer. You're absolutely right. When we're up here, we're making all sorts of assumptions that we haven't actually tested.
And people love to tell you their opinions. I mean, you want to reach out to someone more senior, ask for their opinion. It's interesting. I learned this recently. Instead of asking people for feedback on what you're doing, ask them for advice, because everybody loves to give advice. Feedback feels sort of like burdensome. So most people are delighted to feel like they're an expert and can give you some advice on whatever it is you're doing.
That's a very good tip. Thank you. All right. We've got another question from Whitney. She says, I have a good job I'm happy with. She's with a stable organization, but she's looking to raise her profile or perhaps maintain her profile. I'm working from home with husband, who's also working, and our 4-year-old son. I find my days are taxing. I've lost a lot of energy. Oh, girl, I feel you. To post on social or use LinkedIn. Any tips for how to navigate that? That's a tough one.
It's so hard, and I feel you. I have an 8-year-old daughter. I think the stress and the energy it takes to have a child at home and have everything going on is really hard. So a couple of thoughts. One is, maybe you don't have to push yourself right now to have a higher profile. Maybe just treading water and getting by for the next month or two is okay. So I want to give you that out if you want it. The second thing I would say is just start really, really small. One post on LinkedIn a week, or commenting on two people's posts, anything where you can just dip a toe in the water. And one of the things I find really interesting is there are weeks where I'll post like once on social media and people are like, oh my gosh, you're everywhere. You know, it's like most people are not paying attention to how often you are available. So maybe it's one post on LinkedIn. Maybe you get involved with like an employee resource group at your company or something where there are opportunities to make one smart comment on a Zoom call. I would really start very small, but I think consistency is important. So whatever you choose, and I would choose just based on what your interest is, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or an employee resource group or a company blog, pick one to focus on, and then contribute once a week in a meaningful way and kind of see what happens. So I wouldn't push yourself to try to do 5 posts a day to raise your profile. It's actually amazing how little an effort, as long as it's done consistently, can really elevate your status.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's 100% the consistency. People want to know, yeah, she posts once a day or she posts every other day, and it's always something that's interesting or something that is shareable. It's kind of how I run through my process when I post something. If I'm posting something, is this something that I would share with my friends, you know, or with my connections or my colleagues or whatever it is. I want to ask you a question about writing, and I know you have a book coming out, and I believe you have a new book coming out, so I want to hear all about that. But if, you know, one of the things that I've had on my mind, and I know other people do as well, is I want to write a book, whether it's about my expertise or if it's about my story. Is this a good time to dive into something like that? And I also think people don't realize that they have a story. Sometimes I can't write a book. I'm not going to consider, but everybody has something to share. So is this a good time to dive into it? And then tell us about your book.
You got it. So I have a very biased view, which is I love writing books and having written books. And I think anyone who wants to write a book should write a book. Like, end of discussion, just do it. It's the best feeling in the world. Also, it's one of the few things in life where once you do it, you can hold it in your hand and it's done and you never have to do anything else with it. It's just there, which is the best feeling in the world. Yeah, it's not like parenting where you're like a parent for the rest of your life, you know, like keeps going. This is like a tangible thing with an endpoint. I will say I know nothing about fiction. So if you want to write a novel or a children's book, different conversation. But with a business book or a memoir or anything that would be in the nonfiction category, just start writing. And the advice that I give most people, because a lot of people tell me they want to write a book, again, it's get out of your head and start to get words on paper. And a book is a project just like anything else. And if you look at like the most famous writers in the world, they say, I get up in the morning, I make coffee and I write. It's just a project like anything else. You can't wait for inspiration to hit. You don't have to go and like rent a house in Vermont and have like your writing retreat of, you know, glamorous beauty and freedom. Like, get up and write. So it's your job. And I think that if you start with the writing, you're going to kind of find your way through. After that, there is a process of finding an agent and publishers and so on if you want to go that direction. But one of the most amazing things in the past decade or so, you can write a book and put it on Amazon tomorrow if you wanted to. And a lot of people start that way, and then they end up sort of elevating to a major publisher. So the barrier to entry is really low, but nothing happens until you actually start writing.
That's very good advice. You're absolutely. Well, tell us about your new book.
Yes. So I'm excited. This was actually born of the pandemic. I was sitting, you know, twiddling my thumbs in March when all my speaking was canceled. And I do have an agent because I've written 3 books. And she called me and said, I feel like you have an idea. I like feel in the universe that you have an idea. And I actually thought that to exactly where you started the interview, to what happened to me in 2001, that I was really paralyzed and didn't know what to do. I'm such a planner and there was no way to have a plan. And what I kept saying to her was, it's like when you're driving and the GPS, you go the wrong way and it says recalculating, and you know you're going to get where you need to go, but you don't know how you're going to get there. Right. And so my new book is called Recalculating, Navigating Your Career in Times of Change. And it's really about, thank you. It's about when you're graduating from college or you're in a career change or you're thinking of starting a business, everything we talked about today. How do you have a plan when there is no plan, right? How do you make decisions when you don't know the answer? And I think the reality is it's probably always like that, and we pretend that we have more control than we do. But really, yeah, right. But what's been really fun about it, and I just announced it on social media this week, I wrote in a post, hey, everybody, like, do you have a recalculating story? Let me know. I think everybody has a recalculating story. Like, nobody gets on a path and says, wow, this is where I want to be, and everything is a straight line, and it was a delight, and nobody ever didn't give me a job. I got every promotion I wanted. Like, it never happens that way. And so sort of thinking about that everybody has a winding path was actually really exciting and inspiring. So yeah, if any of you have a story that you want to share, including you, Carrie, I'd love to hear it. But it just made me realize nobody is on a straight path. And maybe that's kind of the point. If we get that idea out of our mind, we'd sort of be a lot easier on ourselves.
Maybe we'd enjoy the journey a little bit more.
That sounds good, right?
Yeah. So when does it come out?
We're fast tracking it March, which means I have to write the whole book this summer. It's due September 1st, and it's going to come out in March 2021. I know. Don't make that face. You're scaring me.
I'm sorry. Hold on.
I feel the same way inside. I'm just trying to keep it together. Yeah.
It's going to happen. This is the one path that's going to go straight from point A to point B. I can feel it.
Oh my gosh. That's why I didn't blow dry my hair. I was like, oh my gosh, writing, going on Zoom. So yeah, some things fall by the wayside.
I haven't washed my hair in probably close to a week. So it's just,
I love it. Looks great.
That's covering it up. So I can't believe we're already at 1:26. We just have a couple more minutes for us to talk. But I wanted to ask you, are there, maybe there are 3 tips, tricks, strategies. Are there, if our attendees were to walk away with 3 main points from your talk today and your area of expertise, what would it be that you would want them to leave with the knowledge?
Okay, so 1, take action every day toward whatever your goal is, even if it's a tiny baby step. Get out of your head and actually do something to see if it's the right step or not. Even if it's a total disaster or you decide that you hate it, at least you'll know and you can do something different tomorrow. So I think number 1 is action.
Okay.
Number 2, and again, we talked about this too, you are not alone. Tap into the people the people in your college network, alumni network, jobs that you've had, your friends, your neighbors, your family. Don't exist on your own and feel like you have to do everything. Once you tap into your network, things are so much more valuable. And the third I would say is take advantage of all of the resources now. It's kind of astonishing to me, like this summit that's donation-based, or a lot of the free TED Talks and Harvard classes, and all of these organizations are making content that used to be very high price free. So if there's something that you want to get better at or learn or do, you kind of have an amazing opportunity right now to have access to that. So kind of the growth mindset mentality, if you want to get a little better at something right now that you never had time to do, tap into all of the available resources. And I think it kind of feeds your soul to improve and do something for yourself, especially as a busy mom, even if it's a five-minute podcast.
Right. Well, and you end up not feeling stagnant. Sometimes it's just literally forcing yourself to put one foot after the other. And then you realize when you get to the destination or at some point along the journey, you're actually not hating it as much as you thought you would, and you're making some progress.
And look, on calls like this, I'm so grateful to you, Nicole, and everyone involved in the summit. You have a group of people who want to talk about these issues, who want to improve, who want to ask and answer questions. That's everywhere right now. And I always feel much more inspired when I kind of tap into those communities.
Oh, well, we're inspired to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
So in case anybody either wants to hire you as a speaker, is interested in learning more about your book, where can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you? You're on LinkedIn. Is that the best way, or? Yeah,
so my website, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. The challenge is everything is my name, which is really hard to spell, but I think it shows up on Zoom. I'm at lindseypollak.com, LindseyPollak, and I would love to connect with anyone, anywhere that's good for you.
Well, we appreciate having you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for everything. Really glad to be here.
Absolutely. Before we let our participants go, a quick reminder that when you register for the summit, obviously the summit is free, but we do encourage a donation. All of those donations are going to support a local nonprofit, a charity called Project Kind. Their website is projectkind123.org. Any money that is raised is going to help women, single moms, which are of course disproportionately bearing the burden in terms of not only childcare, but loss of jobs as we go through this pandemic. So we're putting roofs over moms' heads and their kids' kids' heads and hopefully putting food on the table as well. So if you're interested in donating, you can either go to the website. We've also made it really easy to do. If you text Project Kind to 44321, you can donate that way as well. Also, a quick reminder before we leave you for today that the next event will be held tomorrow morning at 8:30. It is a mindful parenting workshop with Pause to Be Present. So we certainly hope to see you there. We thank all of our participants, and of course we thank Lindsay for being here as well. And we hope to see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful afternoon.